Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Kiana London, and this is our third session of Legacy Live. And we're joined graciously by Marianne, our co-founder and executive director. Welcome, Marianne. Thank you all for joining. We're so excited to have you. This is our third session of Legacy Live, so we are just excited and really getting a lot of both, fulfillment for ourselves, but also really expressing our gratitude to all of you in these sessions. And our first was sort of an intro to what we do, and our second session was really a look at the 5-point care plan that we offer for holistic healing for our kids at Legacy of Hope. Both of those sessions are available on our YouTube, and we'll share other ways at the end of this session, other ways on how to engage with us and really be welcomed into our day to day. We want to share exactly what we do in Honduras and sort of the theories and the practices behind the decisions that we make. So today is all about self-care and resilience. And you all have demonstrated resilience already by joining us. I think Marianne and I have demonstrated some deep breaths and self-care in in the challenges of getting up and running. But we really, self-care for us is truly a mission imperative. Our mission is to provide holistic, family-based care for orphaned and vulnerable children in Honduras, so that they can heal, achieve permanency, and reach their full potential. We're dedicated to supporting abandoned and vulnerable children through our foster care program, our crisis care program, and family preservation initiatives. So we have to ask ourselves, why is self-care so important? And for that mission to really work, the adults that are around our children need to be present and regulated. They need to be able to care for themselves, but also exhibit that care for one another and extend it toward our entire community and the folks that we serve. Strengthening and stewarding resilience is a large part of the way we operate as an organization. And this is really a perfect moment because Marianne and Matt really brought about this incredible organization and founded its creation and expansion. So it's a great moment to ask you, Marianne, what motivated Legacy of Hope to center self-care and resilience as a part of our organizational values?
That's a big question. I think first of all, I did not quite honestly come into this space with the understanding of resilience and what it took to build and create resilience. And so I was actually like pushing myself very hard and ended up in the hospital. And a doctor looked at me and he said, your body is exhausted and it's shutting down. And if you don't find a new rhythm and make some different choices, you're not going to be here to continue serving. And so, what's kind of interesting about that is that when he was saying that to me, I didn't believe him because I was working on my computer from my hospital bed. And I thought I don't feel exhausted. I think you misdiagnosed me or whatever. And later on, I was speaking to a friend and I was talking about how I used to train for marathons. And I would run 8, 9, 10 miles a day getting ready for this marathon. And somebody gifted me some training sessions in the gym. And so I went and I worked with this trainer, and he had me doing like 25 jumping jacks and 30 sit-ups. And I'll tell you, I was so exhausted just trying to do jumping jacks and these sit-ups. And I thought, this doesn't make any sense. I run so many miles a day. And what happened was I was using different muscle groups. And so I tell you that story because I think a lot of us get used to using specific muscles, our stress muscles. We know and we're accustomed to being stressed in a certain way. So much so that we don't pay attention to our body's signals when our body is telling us, hey, you're tired. Hey, you need to take a break. And so, just because you don't feel stressed
Mm,
doesn't mean that you're not stressed. So that began my journey in trying to understand what is resilience, how do we cultivate it, why is it important? And then I brought that to my team because I don't want to see turnover in my team. I didn't want to see my team members suffering in the same way that I suffered. And so I was very intentional about um, stewarding
mm,
um, self-care and the stress. Oh, let me say this, stewarding um, the stress so that I
mm.
was able to continue moving forward and so that my team was able to continue moving forward.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that sometimes there are these it's out of these breaking moments or out of these crises that so much reflection emerges. And as a team member of Legacy of Hope, I can say that it is felt throughout the organization. And at the end we'll share a bit from other team members on how they foster their own resilience, but making it a core tenet of how we operate has been such a gift, but also normalized. It's less of a reward. It's actually more of a regular practice. And I think that we all can experience that in every walk of our life, making sure that building our resilience is not the thing that comes after we break down. It's the thing that we practice every day in small and large moments, so that we hopefully can adapt to the challenges we face. So this slide really, in talking with Marianne, uh, just recently, we were sort of working through, what is the biopsychosocial aspect of resilience? And I am not a scientist. So I was like, well, what are telomeres, and what are these aspects that are really operating within our cells? Marion, can you explain a little bit more about sort of the body's response and our cellular health and how that impacts sort of our mind and our relationships as well?
Yeah. So let's go back to that word biopsychosocial, right? That is sounds a little bit scary, but really it is three different areas, right? So our biology,
Mm,
our psychology, and then our social networks. And we've talked about before that we've been created for relationship. And so we can't just consider our biology, right? At the cellular level. We also need to think about our psychology and our emotional response. And then we also need to think about our social resources? Do we have good support networks? Are we in a socially supportive area where we feel accepted, where we know that we can seek help? And so when we talk about this psychosocial, what we're really saying is that our bodies are shaped not just by our biology, but also by our thoughts and emotions, and then also by the relationships and the communities that are around us. So we want to really focus on our ability to move from stress back
mm,
into steadiness and in not just in our relationships but also within our own nervous system. So that takes awareness, right? Not sitting in our bed working on our hospital bed working saying I'm fine. We need that awareness. And then at the cellular level, to know what our body needs, and that's good hydration, that's good nutrition, that's being aware of our past, that's being aware of what even our DNA, what comes with our DNA, and that's where we're going to get and talk a little bit about the telomeres. So, resilience is about adapting well in the face of hard things. So, this is an awareness that growth can come not only from the good, but also from the painful parts of life. So I say that because when we struggle and when we suffer, it really helps us to appreciate all of the good things even more. So, I'm so sorry. My phone keeps going off. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb, but apparently my computer didn't get the memo. So anyway, just moving on. I also want to talk about just the wisdom to
Mm,
know when it's time to press forward and when it's time to rest and when it's time to redirect our energy. Another thing that's really important is that in our relationships, resilience looks like rupture and repair.
mm,
And oftentimes, I think we put ourselves in this space where, like, I have to be perfect. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to make any mistakes. But it's actually in that rupture and repair that our ability to connect, our resilience strengthens.
mm,
It's kind of like a muscle, right? So if you think about you go to the gym and you're breaking down muscle, you're rupturing that, and then in the repair is when that muscle grows bigger.
mm.
And so that rupture and repair is so important. And so moving through the wear and the tear of the chronic stress, let's talk a little bit about our telomeres. So our telomeres are these little protective caps on our DNA. And what we know about them is that what our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents had suffered is actually passed down to us through our DNA and the length of our telomeres. And so the longer the telomeres, the more resilience a person has. And the shorter the telomeres, the more sensitive they are to stress, to chronic illness. And so it's important for us to not only understand our personal history, but to also understand the history of our ancestors and what's been passed down for us and to be able to steward that well. So things like being aware, really practicing good sleep hygiene, moving our bodies in healthy ways, um, being out in nature, connecting to sunlight, having meaningful connections. These are all linked to healthier psychosocial states. And so when we're aware, we can choose to go in a healthier direction. We can lean into connection instead of feeling like we can no longer keep doing the things that we love to do. We can be intentional about creating margin and creating health so that we can strengthen our ability to do the things that we love.
It's so fascinating. I think that that aspect of the biological passing down and what we experience in our DNA and how long our telomeres are is at least in my world, a little known space. And I think that it for me at least is a soothing thing to have more information about the scientific background, really to say, okay, it's not sometimes we say, yeah, it was written in the stars or it was part of God's plan. Like it's part of something that we work with and we adapt with rather than trying to fight against. And in these moments, we're carrying so much within our bodies. Um, our work at Legacy of Hope really touches hard things. We're dealing with emergency placements and hospital visits, dysregulated children, and distressing reports that can lead to secondary post-traumatic stress, and really learning how to deal with painful traumas and help our children move through them. So it's normal both in our line of work and in all walks and all challenges of life that our bodies feel that load and carry that weight of everything that we see and we experience. Some of the signs that show up for us, or the ways that our stresses can show up, are, feeling numb to the world or detached or wanting to withdraw. Sometimes we respond with a hypervigilance. If I can only control it, then maybe I can get down to the bottom of what's going on. But that's also a sense of irritability. And so we we then, when we're feeling those signs, have to find the right techniques on how to respond. So all together, let's take a quick 10-second reset. So I want everyone to plant your feet, unclench your jaw. I often have jaw tension that I'm not aware of. So plant your feet, unclench your jaw, and inhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A longer exhale helps calm the body by activating our parasympathetic nervous system. So that is what's responsible for this rest and digest response. It also helps to reduce the sympathetic nervous system activity, which is responsible or associated for our fight, flight, and freeze response. And repeating this brief breathing exercise throughout the day will just help you kind of pump the brakes, push pause on all the stresses that build, all the things that trigger us. And we're stimulating the vagus nerve through that longer exhalation. So we're signaling to the brain it's actually safe to relax in this moment. So I invite us all to, even with those 10 seconds, just anytime you're feeling activated throughout the day and it's feeling a little uncomfortable, remember that we can breathe through it. At Legacy of Hope, we have many reminders of self-care that really guide our work, and we want to share some core 6, 6 that we always come back to, 6 that we want to think about, spend time with, and really process together. They are: you can't pour from an empty cup. I mean, if you have nothing to give, how are you giving? I think that it's really when we're feeling so empty and we're pushing through, really similarly to your story, Marianne, about, I'm not exhausted, how could that be true? But all the symbols and all the signals were saying yes, and that makes it so much harder to show up in the ways that we want. Our nervous systems are contagious. We'll talk a bit about what mirror neurons are and how we are sharing, energy with each other and often replicating behaviors, but we are, the way that we present our nervous systems are so felt and tangible to the people around us. Modeling resilience builds resilience. Burnout breaks relationships. Resilient caregivers protect traumatized children, and healthy teams equal sustainable impact. And we'll share some thoughts from our team and reflections on how we really preserve the health and well-being of ourselves. So check in with yourself right now. How full are you? Is your cup empty? Does it feel halfway? Maybe it feels really full. Where are you really energized? Where do you have capacity? And also, where are you feeling a little depleted or exhausted or tense? We believe that you can't pour from an empty cup, and for present adults to be really working at their highest capacity for children with high needs, that our presence needs fuel. So, as mentioned before, deep sleep is just so important. Deep sleep resets emotional reactivity. Hydration supports part of our brain that helps us choose our responses. We're hydrated and we feel like we can pay better attention, we can make wise choices, we can slow down in the moments that we need to. And along with this slowing down, giving ourselves breaks, 10 seconds, 60 seconds, breath, water, sunlight, a quick walk, something that, you know, um, really re-engages us to our present self. So I'm hoping that you all today choose one micro break that you can maybe do after this session. Maybe you'll need to do it in a couple of hours or again at the end of the day. But something that you're telling yourself today, I'm going to protect this so that I'm reactivating my parasympathetic nervous system and I'm inviting more calm into my day. And so our nervous systems are totally contagious. And this is where, again, Marianne's expertise in really understanding the brain and the biology of how we work has been so helpful for me. I, kids will read what our bodies are doing before our words. And so, Marianne, how are some ways that you've noticed that our nervous systems are contagious throughout our work, your day, life. And then hopefully you can explain a bit more about mirror neurons.
Yeah, so I guess all of us could think of a time where we went into a situation and sat down in a meeting or a birthday party, and you could say, like, it felt so tense. It felt so uncomfortable. What is that? What is happening? And so what's happening is that we have these little synapses in our brain, these little mirror neurons, which are actually reading the room and they're responding to what they see and feel in the space. And so that being said, you can imagine if you go into a boardroom and you could cut the tension with a knife, right? And you feel that in your body, and you're an adult and you're able to be aware and you're able to regulate yourself. Children often do not have that same ability. So they are in the same way picking up, mirroring what they see and perceive from our bodies. And even before we say words, I want you to think about a tiny baby that you have, and you're holding that baby in your arms, and you smile at that baby. And what does that baby do?
Yeah,
They
smile.
smile right back, right? Or they make a sound, and what do you do?
Yeah.
You mimic that sound back, right? So your calm is this biological invitation for relationship. Um, and so we look at the research, we're reminded that when we are able to be aware and to be grounded, then the children around us are also able to feel safe. And when they feel safe, they can learn, they can explore, they can express, they can get in touch with what they're actually feeling instead of reacting from a place of fear. And so when we're dysregulated, children and even pets will pick up on that before we can even say a word. So I want you to think about, a child, they will fall into rhythm with you. And so if you are super stressed and trying to make dinner and get everything done and see if everybody has their homework done, the kids are going to respond also with that same tension and stress. It's our it's our brain's way of making sure that we stay safe. So if our brain is picking up on, hey, something's not right here, something's very stressful here, it feels and sees danger and it goes on alert. And how do we respond in alert? Is we fight, we flight, or we freeze, right? And so that is our brain coming into play, doing a great job, doing what it was programmed to do to keep us safe, to be on alert for any kind of danger and to keep our bodies safe. So we want to remind ourselves, even though we feel stress, even though we feel tension, um, we are not, our lives are not in danger. And we can put that in perspective in the ways that we've already mentioned, right? Just naming it. Man, I feel stressed right now. That was a hard day, right? We could take a breath. How many, I can tell you, I walk through life and I see people, they are not breathing. People, we need to breathe. We're forgetting to breathe. And the most important thing about that is just that your exhale is longer than your inhale. So maybe you can't do 4 and 6 or 7, but maybe you can do 2 and 3. And then work towards being able to do 3 and 4, inhale 3 and exhale 4, and work towards inhaling 4 and exhaling 4. 5. So we want to make sure that we're breathing and then also our voice. How many of you have been saying something, maybe, snipping at your kids, and then the phone rings and you're like, hello?
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, so our voice can also be a way that we can regulate our nervous system. So when you think about that and you answer that phone and you say hello, just after you've been yelling at someone or upset with someone, you will actually feel that your body follows suit. So we can change how we're feeling by breathing and then the way that we speak. And just like you said, Kiana, you carry a lot of tension in your jaw. Just relaxing that or putting a smile on your face or laughing about something can help to reset that. The next part is that modeling resilience builds resilience. And so, in the same way that we were talking about mirror neurons, I know that I can help to regulate the people around me by showing up in healthy ways, by responding in healthy ways. And that doesn't mean that I never get frustrated and it's never that I'm never stressed, but it does mean that I will take a pause before I respond. I will say how I'm feeling. I will ask for help. I will say, hey, I'm feeling really stressed right now. I need a minute to just breathe. Could you just sit here with me while I do that? Could you, hold my hand? By reaching out, we're teaching our children or people around us that it's okay to be human, that we don't have to hold to that perfection. And that itself is very regulating. So in this way, we're teaching our kids to endure, we're teaching them to thrive. Um, and I also want to point out that we keep talking about taking a pause or being quiet, but there are, for some people, they need to move. They need to listen to music. They need to dance. They need to jump on the trampoline. They need to go for a run, not a peaceful walk through nature. They need to splash in the puddles. And that's okay too. We need to know ourselves and know what works for us. And that is a very personal journey. And there's no right and wrong way to regulate. Something someone told me recently is that even when we are self-regulating, we are recalling memories from a time when someone co-regulated. Even when you say, I'm calming myself down, what you're actually doing is recalling strategies that you were taught and did in tandem with someone else. Maybe that was an attachment figure. Maybe that is, your religion where you just we're able to draw close to the Lord and to feel his presence and to be calm and to know that he has all of this in his hands, that you don't have to carry the burden. So there's never a point where, even though we say, I'm calming myself down, I'm regulating myself, what you're actually doing is a skill that was learned in connection with someone else. And so, just going back to the research, it continues to affirm that all of this regulation is learned in relationship, and the attachment patterns that we experience early on, or the attachment patterns that we develop later on when we become aware, shape how our brains and bodies are able to respond to stress. You always have a choice. You always have a choice how you respond. And so it's up to you whether you want to calm and redirect and connect, or whether you're needing to explode. Um, and sometimes we just do. Like sometimes we just are, we're to a point where we just feel like we have to explode. But again, rupture, when we have a
Mhm.
rupture, what do? We go back and we repair. And in doing that, we strengthen the relationships that help to make us more resilient.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that the discussion too of how much we are always in connection and communication and in relationship with the people around us highlight how critical it is. And, I think in the last, 10 years, burnout is a huge word, but how we want to avoid it because we know that burnout breaks relationships. And if we were always, if our value and the things that contribute to such a healthy, well-regulated, well-formed life are in relationship. It is the things that break it can be so detrimental to our health. Yeah, Marianne, can you share with us a little bit about like what does that look like? How does burnout really fracture our ability to connect?
Right. So I like to think about this in with the word margin. So how much margin do we have left when we come home at the end of the day? And if we're coming home at the end of the day and we have all of this stress that we haven't been able to let go, we go from snapping at colleagues to snapping at the people who are closest to us. And then they start to shut down because they're afraid to be near their sympathetic nervous system, right, is like responding to that. And so we're pushing in past our limits. We're not allowing time for recovery, and we'll notice. And everybody needs to notice. Maybe you're somebody who snaps out and says little, sarcastic quips. Maybe you're somebody whose tone changes. Maybe you're somebody who stops speaking at all. Maybe you've lost patience. Maybe colorful words that you normally would not say begin to enter your vocabulary. Every person needs to understand, okay, how close am I getting to my margin? And then when we realize that we're pushing past that threshold and we are starting to feel that burnout, then we need to take a step back to be able to protect our relationships, to be able to protect our ability to do the things that we love and that are important to us. Pushing forward, and it doesn't matter how I feel, and I'm going to do it anyway. That's going to last for a while, but it's not going to last forever. And the people that will pay the price are the people that are closest to you, the people at the end of your life that you will say, I wish I had had a better relationship. I wish I was closer. Those are the people that you love the most. Right. So maybe if you're not willing to take a step back for yourself, you would be willing to take a step back for the people that you love the most. So we can build in opportunities to debrief, to take a break, to rest. We may even decide, hey, you know what? I need to go a different direction. I remember when we first started in the foster care field, we went through a lot of social workers. Same thing that we're dealing with here, really hard cases. But some of those social workers loved the work that they were doing so much that they shift from doing foster care to adoptive care.
Mm,
So it was in the same vein, they were still able to do the things that they loved without the heavy emotional toll that foster care was taking on them. So maybe the question is that maybe we just need to go a different direction. Maybe we need to move into leadership and
mm,
or a training position instead of being the one doing the hands-on day after day work. And I think the next thing that we want to touch is that resilient caregivers are the greatest protective factor. For healing to happen, children, I have said this a million times, need at least one consistent, safe, emotionally available adult. And that allows them to become resilient and to build in resilience. And that one regulated adult can change the trajectory of a child's life. And it's this simple tool of serve and return. And what did I say earlier? Even when you're regulating yourself, what you are doing is recalling a moment where somebody who was close to you came alongside and helped you to feel calm. And so, as that adult caregiver, we are creating those neural pathways and those connections that allow our children to be able to feel safe and to recall safety in order to regulate. So we have focused attention, we have good eye contact, we're talking about our tone, our physical and verbal expressions that let a child know that they're precious, that their voice is heard, that they are valued. And I want you to think about doing that for a child, but I also want you to think about what's that like to
mm,
receive that as an adult, to come to someone that is close to you and to be heard, to have the eye contact, to know that your words matter, to know that they are empathizing with what you're feeling. That is very regulating. That helps us to feel like, you know what, after that, I can get up and I can move on and I can do it as the best version of myself, to be really seen and known and to know that you're not alone. So, and moving on right from that is that those kinds of healthy teams where you know that your coworker or somebody that's close to you, in our case, it's our team, right? We practice resiliency within our teams. And I know I can go to one of my coworkers and say, I'm having a hard time. And they're going to respond with support and empathy. They're going to hear my words. They're going to give me good eye contact. They may give me physical touch in the way that feels good to me so that I know that I'm supported and that I'm not alone. They may say, what do you need? Do you need to go for a walk? Would you like some water? Can I make you some tea? So, in our team, being able to arrive and to support each other means that we are more sustainable. We're making space for rest, we're making space for reflection. We have this mutual care that makes us stronger. It allows us to go home to our families and show up as the person we want to be for our families. And we say at Legacy of Hope, safe and strong families. That doesn't just mean the people we serve, that also means the families inside. So we're always working on that. Um, and it allows us to do the work that we love and that is so meaningful to us, knowing that our team has our back. And I will say also a part of that is that our team won't hesitate to say, do you know what? Seems like you're pretty stressed out right now. You wouldn't normally respond like that. Do you want to
mm,
go for a walk with me? Do you need a couple of minutes? And that accountability is also really important. Um, and so we know that we belong And we know that our brains and our bodies are going to get what they need, not just because we're aware and doing what's right, but that we have people around us that are helping us with that. And when that support is predictable, our brain doesn't have to stay on guard. We can leave that primal part of our brain, and we can use our whole integrated brain um, to be able to be who we want to be, the best version of ourselves for the people that we love and for the work that we care about.
We, as a part of this, we really too want to just celebrate our team. So we asked our team to share certain practices that they use that are important to come to show up to work in that ability to be able to support each other and to be able to know, you know, even the awareness of knowing when our colleague is feeling tense or stressed or activated. And so I want to share a bit from our team. Tanya responded, quote, self-care through exercise. I try to exercise at least 3 times a week, dedicating at least 30 minutes to it. This habit has brought me great benefits. It strengthens my physical health, helps me release stress, and allows me to rest better at night. It also allows me to feel good about myself, raising my self-esteem and reinforcing the value of caring for myself with love and consistency. Gabby shared, oops, Gabby shared that, quote, one of the things I do to take care of myself and avoid burnout is to take conscious breaks after big events. In the past, after a fundraising event, I would continue working at the same pace, and that always ended badly, with migraine attacks and even hospital visits for pushing myself too hard. Over time, I learned to listen to my body, and now I allow myself to rest and take time for myself after every major event. Giving myself space to vacation and disconnect without feeling guilty has made a huge difference. My body and mind feel more relaxed, and I have better chance of focusing in a healthier and more sustainable way. Um, and so as I'm reading, I'm going to read Flor's response and Susie's as well, but as you're watching, think of the things that you employ in your life. Or, we're coming out of a season of summer, and there might have been things that you'll carry through the fall that are just reinvigorating the rest that you're, by really attending to the rest that your body needs. Please feel free to send those in the chat, and we want to hear from you about what you do for your own sustainable impact. Flor said, in my case, in addition to physical activity, I do morning devotions and attend church. I am also taking a salsa class to disconnect and focus on something totally different from my daily lifestyle. I love that. I think, Marianne, as you were saying, we all re-regulate and we all use different methods. And so I think the diversity within ourselves, the ability to acknowledge, like, this is totally different than that, but both are contributing to some part of my resilience building. So important. And Susie said that work and physical exhaustion is very common in all professions, and in our fields of work, the effect can be pronounced as we experience very difficult situations that are often beyond our control. So, to a few things that Susie does to take care of herself are having friends with whom I can talk about other topics, so I don't always dwell on the same things. Working with my team, I build trust so that we can say when we are feeling overwhelmed and look for ways to do activities that help us minimize the effects of stress. Susie exercises, walks, and does physical activity. And going out to places surrounded by nature really helps Susie reground and refocus. All of our teammates have shared, similar ways of where can we refill our cup when it's feeling really empty. And I think that particularly for our caregivers and our tias and the folks that are really facing um, challenging days every single day. In a year, we're working with over 200 children at Legacy of Hope. And so we have a very like, variety of different cases. We're seeing different types of traumas and the demands that it places both on our team, but also on the children and on the extended families that build out to our community. um, those impacts are felt, and we have to be really intentional about how we build our own resilience, and we lengthen those telomeres in our DNA. We're really at Legacy of Hope also building this shared resilience towards sustainable impact together. So it was really heartening to hear and to read our responses that there were some commonalities, but also each person is wholly individual in the ways that they choose to take care of themselves. We are coming toward the end of our time. And so, in our thank you, I love this photo because I think it just, you can hear the laugh. And so, I want to thank you for joining us. And I also want to invite you to share with us your wisdom, both reflecting on what types of self care practices you do. We actually have a few minutes. I'm not going to say that I technologically exactly know how to open it up, but I will try. But think about, you know, and if you'd like to share, I'm going to try this in just a minute. But think about what self-care practices that you like to employ, and how do you safeguard your emotional well-being when your life and your work feels heavy? As always, thank you so much for joining us. We're just really loving this. We're loving Legacy Live. It's such a wonderful opportunity for us, and we hope that you continue to follow us and join us. Um, if anyone at this moment, let's see, can I'm going to try to open it up so that you can speak as well. If I can't do that, maybe just type in the chat um, what your, okay, I'm allowing everyone to talk. You are muted currently, but if you would like to talk and share just one thing that you do for yourself, please feel free to unmute yourself and share with us, or type in the chat of what you're feeling. And if not, I'll share one. So, sometimes I feel very disconnected. Feel very disconnected to listening to music that I enjoy. And I go like toward podcasts because I think, okay, I want some kind of input. But when I really want to just slow down and allow myself to enjoy all different kinds of music that I love, I'll intentionally will play a playlist, or will go on a walk or play it loud in my apartment. Something it is for me an intentional practice where I'm like, I know that I need this, and so I need to listen to music. Angie shares that lifting weights is the best stress reliever. I think that's fantastic. It also shows you're telling your brain and your body that I can do this. Like, I'm strong. And that's such a wonderful way to relieve stress. Thanks for sharing.
I also think that finding, recapturing play is really important. So maybe we could take a moment and think of something that you loved to play as a child, and think about how you could recapture that kind of play now. And why do I say that? I say that because I get to play with kids all day long in play therapy, and because I'm a mom, but we are able to play when our brain feels safe. And if we are super stressed, we're focused on other things and we can't truly engage in play. So, what feels like play to you?
Mm.
Because if you can focus on creating opportunities for yourself to really engage in play, you're going to be able to build some margin back into your life for yourself.
I love that. And with that, we'll close. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Karen and Ellie and Angie. We really appreciate your presence with us. And to all of you who will watch the video at a future time, keep showing up. We love Legacy Live, and we're just so excited to continue building it out with you all. Thanks, everyone. Take care.